When a single mom snoozes on a billionaire's shoulder, you won't believe what happens next. The train rattled down the tracks, its metal wheels clanging like a tribal drum. The noise mixed with the low hum of conversation filled the air. But in one corner, amid the chaos, there was a silence. A single mom named Jess, holding a worn-out purse in one hand and a tattered book in the other, had dozed off on the shoulder of a man in an expensive suit. His crisp white shirt and gleaming cufflinks sparkled under the harsh fluorescent lights of the train car. She had no idea who he was, no clue that she might have just fallen onto the shoulder of a billionaire. When she finally stirred, her eyes flickered open to find the enigmatic man staring directly back at her. His deep blue eyes held a blend of amusement and surprise that sent a shiver down her spine. How had she let her guard down like this? The people around them seemed to hold their breath, whispering in hushed tones, curiosity dancing in their eyes. They witnessed the awkwardness unfold, a scene straight out of a rom-com, except this was real life, and Jess's heart raced at the absurdity of the moment. Suddenly, a low, resonating laugh escaped his lips, cutting through the tension as if it were a knife slicing through butter. The laughter echoed, and it was unexpected, rich and warm. Had she made a mistake? Maybe it was the way he looked, so out of place amidst the everyday chaos. He leaned closer, a hint of mischief in his eyes, and she felt her pulse quicken. What was he about to say? Each second felt like an eternity. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference, let's connect. His voice broke the moment, pulling Jess back from her thoughts like a lifebuoy thrown into turbulent waters. Was it just a coincidence, or was there something more? The weight of his gaze lingered, filling the air with a potent mix of intrigue and uncertainty. As the train lurched forward, Jess felt an electric connection sparking between them, a thread of fate knitting them closer together. But then, just as quickly, the lights flickered. A loud boom echoed outside, and the train screeched to a sudden halt. Panic erupted, screams blending with the jolting shock of the impact. Jess's heart pounded like a jackhammer, fear rooting her in place. What was happening? She glanced at him, and for a split second, she could see his carefully masked concern, and it was enough to send her spiraling into a whirlwind of confusion. As chaos unfolded around them, Jess grasped tighter onto the armrest, searching for clarity in a sudden storm of blaring alarms and frantic voices. Would they survive this? Would the handsome stranger with the impeccable charm keep her safe? Every instinct screamed that danger was just beginning to unravel, and her life was about to change forever. The screeching halt sent a pulse of fear through the cabin. People were scrambling from their seats. Jess's heart raced in coordination with the panicked shouts echoing off the metal walls. She was still braced against the billionaire's shoulder, but now there was a sense of desperate urgency bleeding into the air. Stay calm. The man shouted, his voice commanding, cutting through the chaos like a beacon. We need to stay together. He was no longer just a stranger, he was her shield against the storm unfolding around them. Jess caught a glimpse of his watch, a classic piece worth more than a month's rent, before his hand landed firmly but gently on her back. Follow me. Without waiting for her response, he stood and pulled her to her feet. Jess stumbled, dazed by the shift from confusion to action. The train lights flickered again, casting eerie shadows that danced across the panicking crowd. Amid the chaos, Jess caught snippets of frantic news reports crackling over the intercom. Power failure, emergency protocols in place. The words felt cold and distant, almost unreal as she focused on the tall man guiding her toward the exit. Where are we going? She managed to ask, dragging her feet and glancing back, worried for her son, who was 3 stops away with a sitter. To safety, he replied, not turning back as they maneuvered through the throng. His grip was firm, encouraging. Trust me. Trust. What did she know about trust when her life had been a long series of guarded decisions? Yet as she felt the warmth radiating from his palm against her back, a surprising thrill coursed through her. Perhaps it was the adrenaline or something deeper stirring within her. They reached a doorway, and for the first time, Jess noticed her surroundings, the flickering emergency lights revealing concerned faces, people frantically typing on their phones, others crying or shouting. Panic held them in a chokehold, yet there was something undeniably captivating about the chaos. Suddenly, the rumble of the train reverberated beneath their feet, and without warning, another loud bang rang out, making everyone jump. Screams erupted, echoing from a few cars down. The air thickened with fear, a bitter cocktail mingling with anxiety. Another train? Jess croaked, barely able to breathe. Possibly, he said, glancing back at her with those piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her facade of calm. We'll get through this together. Just keep moving. They burst through the cramped doorway onto the platform, which now resembled a war zone. The low steel walls encased them in a bubble of dread, but the clang of the outside world pulled at Jess's heart. Get to the exit, he shouted, motioning onward like a soldier guiding his troops. Jess couldn't tell if he was trying to rally her spirits or his own, but she felt the pull to keep running, to trust this intoxicating stranger just a little longer. As they surged forward through the fray, Jess's mind raced, thinking of her son left behind, but there was no turning back now. They rounded a corner, and suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind them, a falling beam striking the ground, debris scattering like shrapnel. Her eyes darted to the chaotic scene, heart pounding. Was this the end? She looked up at the man beside her, desperate for reassurance. He met her gaze, his expression now serious. Here. He pulled her close as they dove behind a barrier, just as a surge of panic washed over the crowd. She could feel his breath quicken, and for an instant, the world melted away, leaving just the two of them in that moment of fleeting safety, but something shifted in his eyes, the glimmer of recognition. Was it fear or something more? Just then, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She tugged it out, hoping for a sign, a way to escape this nightmare. But the screen flashed with a message that made her blood run cold. Jess, you have to leave now. They're coming for you. Who was coming? With every second, the stakes grew higher. As she looked up, ready to question him, the rumbling began anew. Would this encounter lead to salvation or more peril? The tension was electric, and Jess knew whatever came next would alter her reality forever. The clamor around them intensified, drowning out thought. Jess's heart skipped a beat. What did that message mean? Her mind raced as she glanced at the stranger. A mix of determination and uncertainty flickered across his face. Do you have a plan? She asked, her voice just above a whisper, still feeling the weight of fear tightening her chest. That he hesitated, the moment stretching between them like an eternity. We need to get to the street level. It's the best chance to find help. His grip tightened slightly as he glanced around, assessing the chaos that seemed to swell like a tide threatening to consume them. Before Jess could respond, an explosion echoed behind them, reverberating through the underground platform. The gangway shook, and she stifled a scream. Her thoughts snapped back to her son, left alone in this shattering world. She felt paralyzed, fear mingling with anger. How could this be happening? She was just riding home. Now. The man urged, pulling her back to reality. They dashed toward the nearest set of stairs, urgency propelling them forward. People were stumbling around, some were frozen in shock, others clawing their way to safety like it was the last lifeline. That a sharp gasp escaped Jess as she turned to see a woman crumple to the ground, clutching her side in pain. The world was unraveling, and here they were, caught in the storm of desperation and despair. Is she okay? Jess shouted, feeling the urge to help, but she struggled with her own fear. Go. We can't waste time. He pulled her onward, casting a brief glance back to assess the crowd, calculating, competent, however familiar. A hint of something darker flickered across his features. As they emerged from the last set of stairs, sunlight shot through the open doors. Fresh air rushed over Jess like a balm, but it was tainted, smoky, acrid, filled with the odor of something burning. They stumbled onto the street, and chaos erupted all around them. Sirens screamed, people shouted, and in the distance, thick black smoke curled upwards, twisting into the sky like a dark omen. Crowds surged in every direction, panic spreading faster than the fire she could see consuming a nearby building. Over there. He pointed toward a cluster of emergency workers, their reflective vests shining against the chaos. We can get answers. Jess nodded, swallowing hard against the tightness in her throat. As they hurried toward the emergency crew, Jess's phone buzzed again. She pulled it out. Another message. The screen flickered ominously. Don't trust anyone. They're watching you. Her heart thudded like a drum in her chest. She glanced around, scanning the frantic faces, searching for someone suspicious. The billionaire's expression was unreadable, but the tension in his jaw gave her pause. Is your name really Rob? She asked suddenly, fearing secret motives in his calm demeanor. There was an edge to it that made her doubt his intentions. What? He blinked. Of course. What kind of question is that? But Jess felt the simple answer spiraling into a tangle of complexities she couldn't yet untangle. The messages on her phone, the whispers of danger, the push and pull of trust, they slammed against her resolve. Right, she muttered, but a chill ran down her spine. The gears shifted in her mind as she instinctively took a half step back. Before she could say anything else, a figure emerged from the smoke, a man, tall and shadowy, moving with a predator's grace. Jess felt her heart rate spike. He locked eyes with her and the world fell away. There was something ominous in his gaze that struck fear deep into her bones. Jess's stomach knotted as his lips curled in a sinister smile. Jess, he called, his voice smooth but laced with threats. We've been looking for you. The billionaire's body stiffened beside her, protective but uncertain. Would he be able to defend her against this new threat? Jess's mind raced with the uncertainty of her choices, caught between two worlds, the instinct for survival and the burning desire to protect her son. Run! He shouted, shoving her ahead of him. But Jess hesitated. Only for a moment. Can she trust him? Or would she lead herself deeper into danger? The streets roared with confusion as decisions spiraled out of control. Jess faced the unknown, light dancing on the edge of shadow, realizing that whatever lay ahead would test her resilience and the loyalties she thought she understood. With dread pooling in the pit of her stomach, she took a deep breath. The hunt was on. Knowing that soon she would have to confront the unsettling truths creeping up behind her. Would she find a way to escape, or were the shadows closing in for good? Jess bolted forward, propelled by adrenaline, her instincts screaming for survival. The pressure of Rob's hand on her back urged her onward as they dashed through the street, a blur of chaos and fear swirling around them. The air was thick with smoke, and the crackling flames painted the horizon in merciless shades of orange and red. Keep moving. Rob's voice cut through the din. She could see the emergency workers now, but every step felt heavier with more unanswered questions piling up in her mind, the man following them, the predator. He loomed in her thoughts, his piercing gaze haunting. What could he possibly want with her? Her heart raced as images of her son flickered in her mind, each one more desperate than the last. He needed her. She had to find him. As they reached the emergency crew, Jess could hear frantic conversations about evacuations, potential casualties, and the situation escalating beyond control. A woman with a walkie-talkie waved them over as she barked orders, her face a mask of determination. Are you injured? The woman asked, scanning Jess and Rob for visible wounds. No, but we need to find my son. Jess blurted out, the panic rising in her chest. The woman's expression shifted, a hint of empathy glinting in her eyes. What's his name? You need to calm down, we can help you. His name is Leo. He was still on the subway when Jess's voice faltered. The lingering thought of her son trapped in that chaos sent a fresh wave of panic crashing over her. Jess, focus, Rob interjected gently, his hand brushing her arm. Stay with me. We'll find him. We just need to gather information and keep moving. Just then, a high-pitched scream cut through the turmoil. Jess turned instinctively, her body tensing as a group of people surged past them, fleeing from something behind. Her heart dropped, something primal kicking in again. The emergency woman quickly oriented back to the crowd. "Oh no. Evacuation zone, now." She shouted into her radio, urgency lacing her tone. Through the panicked faces, Jess glimpsed a hint of movement. There he was. A flash of bright blonde curls cut through the throng, and a rush of hope surged through Jess. "Leo!" she screamed, and to her shock, he turned, eyes wide, filled with fear. Rob reacted immediately, pushing her toward the boy. "Go. Get him." He seemed to grow tense, glancing over his shoulder, almost like he could sense the predator closing in. The crowd thickened as Jess began maneuvering, shoving through bodies that were real and painted in panic. She reached her son just in time, wrapping her arms around him. Relief flooded her as she knelt down, holding him tightly. "Leo. Thank God. But Mom. What's happening?" he stammered, his little voice trembling. In that moment, everything outside of them blurred, and she felt the world could crumble around them. Nothing mattered if she could just keep him safe. "I don't know, sweetheart. But we're getting out of here." She tried to sound brave, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. As she stood, she felt Rob's hand graze her shoulder, a comforting presence in the storm. Suddenly, the predator appeared again, breaking through the crowd. He looked different now, more menacing, his eyes locked on Jess and Leo. Panic rose in her throat. "Rob. We need to move." Just as they shifted, the air ignited with an explosion from behind them. An old building crumbled as everyone screamed, scattering like leaves in a storm. The world tilted, but Jess stood firm, her son tightly in her grasp, urging Leo forward. "Let us get to safety." But Rob was no longer beside them. He had stepped back, facing the incoming threat head-on. "I'll hold him off. Just go." "What?" "No. We can't leave you," Jess shouted, but he was already positioning himself, his body tense and ready. In that brief moment, Jess's heart shattered with disbelief. By the time the chaos settled around them and her feet began to move forward, she became fully aware that each choice carried consequences. Leo tugged her arm. "Mom, come on." Suddenly, a piece of the building fell, and it crashed down just feet from where they were standing. She couldn't let fear paralyze her now. From the crowd behind, she could hear sirens wailing, but they felt far away. With her son clutching her hand, Jess made a decision. "Trust me, Leo," she yelled, pulling him along as she yammered through the chaos toward what she hoped was safety. But as they ran, the shadow of danger loomed closer, shrouded in smoke and fear. Who could she trust? Where could they go that was safe? And would Rob's sacrifice yield a chance for their escape, or was it all part of a darker game that was only beginning to unfold? A surge of dread gripped her. With every pounding footstep, Jess knew one thing: they were being hunted. And the clock was ticking. The chaotic streets felt like a nightmare, the flames licking at the buildings while screams punctuated the air. Jess dragged Leo forward, each step fueled by sheer willpower, but the weight of uncertainty gnawed at her. Where was Rob? Would he be okay? The questions circled in her mind like vultures. "Mom, why are they screaming?" Leo's small voice broke through her frantic thoughts, glancing up at her with wide, scared eyes that mirrored her own fears. Just follow me, Leo," she managed, trying to sound brave while her heart thundered in her chest. Around them, others were running, faces distorted in terror. The ground trembling beneath her felt like a warning. They were not safe yet. They stumbled away from the smoke and chaos, Jess steering Leo towards a narrow alleyway. It seemed quieter there, a brief respite from the madness, but the flickering shadows still painted the walls with the pulse of panic. Suddenly, a distant roar shattered the fragile calm, like a monster waking from its slumber. Jess froze, her breath hitching in her throat. "Did you hear that?" she whispered, panic bubbling up. Leo nodded, his eyes darting around. "What was it, Mom?" "I don't know." Jess felt her body tense, every nerve screaming that they weren't alone. As if on cue, the predator emerged from the mouth of the alley, his silhouette sharp against the flickering flames outside. A sinister smile curled on his lips, and Jess felt her stomach drop. No. Not now. She darted a glance at Leo, his tiny form trembling against her leg, and took a deep breath. Leaning down, she whispered, "Stay close to me and don't make a sound, okay?" He nodded, understanding the urgency without needing to speak. "Run!" she shouted, and they bolted deeper into the alley, hearts hammering. The predator followed, footsteps echoing like a drumbeat, relentless and cold. They zigzagged through debris, Jess's mind racing for an escape plan. Up ahead, the alley forked, a dim light spilling out from another street. "Mom, what if he catches us?" Leo gasped, glancing behind them. The shadows danced ominously. "We'll figure it out," she breathlessly shot back, forcing herself to stay focused. She could almost feel the predator's hot breath on the back of her neck, a hunter closing in on his prey. As they reached the fork, the sound of sirens wailed again, growing louder. "To the right!" Jess shouted. They dashed into the light, emerging into a street filled with fallen debris, onlookers clustered together, their faces painted with shock and horror. Before she could process their surroundings, an enormous crash echoed. A nearby building shuddered, bricks tumbling from above as screams filled the air again. Jess yanked Leo to the side, narrowly avoiding a cloud of dust and masonry that erupted from the collapse. "Look out!" she screamed, gripping her son's small hands tighter. Just then, she spotted a police officer directing people away from the growing chaos. "Over here. This way!" he shouted, but Jess just stood there, paralyzed. "Mom, we have to." Leo tugs at her sleeve again. Okay. We go." she yelled, but just as she turned to run, the predator swung into view just feet away. He grinned, eyes glinting with malicious excitement. "Did you really think you could get away?" His voice dripped with menace, and everything inside Jess screamed for her to flee. But she couldn't. He abandoned Leo. "Stay behind me," she ordered, instinct taking over, ready to fight if necessary. In that fleeting moment of confrontation, Jess felt a surge of power rise within her. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about protecting her son, about fighting back against the nightmare spilling into their lives. With one final deep breath, she prepared to move, eyes locked on the predator, ready to turn their terror into a chance for escape. Just then, from behind the chaos, she saw movement, a figure rushing toward them with a familiar gait. Rob? Relief flooded her senses, but would he make it before they were cornered? And then there it was. The flicker of hope and fear collided violently in her chest. Would they outsmart their pursuer? Would they escape this darkness, or was this only the beginning of something much worse? Time felt as if it were running out, but one thing was certain: Jess would fight tooth and nail to evade the horrors closing in around them. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she knew that whatever happened next would define their fate, packaged in the raw urgency of survival. Would they break free, or would they finally fall into the predator's trap? The chaos around them became a backdrop to Jess's racing heart. She stared wide-eyed at the predator, who seemed to revel in their fear, moving closer, prowling like a cat preparing to pounce. The sound of Rob's footsteps grew louder as he approached, scanning the area with determination. "Jess!" "Leo!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the thunder of falling debris. The relief of hearing him brought a momentary pause to Jess's frantic thoughts. "Rob! Over here!" she called, desperate. But the predator's gaze shifted, tracking Rob's entrance, narrowing his eyes in recognition. "You brought a playmate," he sneered, every word oozing with mockery. Jess's stomach churned. "Keep moving," she hissed to Leo, urging him toward Rob. The officer was still shouting, directing the crowd to safety, but they were now a few steps away from being entirely ensnared in a deadly game. Just as they reached Rob, the ground trembled again, an ominous sign they had little time left. The fire behind them grew more fierce, crackling like bones underfoot, urging them toward the only possible exit. Jess grabbed Leo's hand tighter, pulling him closer to her side. "We need to get out of here now." Rob's expression was grave, but there was no time for questions. "Follow me," he said, steering them toward a storefront that shimmered like a beacon amid the chaos. Jess felt the bitter reality wash over her as they raced toward safety, a moment of respite that felt precarious, like a fragile balance waiting to break. Out of nowhere, a loud explosion rocked the street behind them, sending flames shooting into the sky and enveloping the buildings with a macabre glow. Jess stumbled, her heart racing as a wave of heat washed over her. "Go!" Rob shouted again, pushing them toward the entrance. Leo clung to Jess, his small body shaking. They barreled inside, slamming against the cool wall of the building. Clarity enveloped Jess for a fleeting second before dread washed back over. The store was deserted, an eerie silence juxtaposed against the chaos outside. "What just happened?" Rob panted, his brows knitted with concern. Jess shook her head. "I don't know. It's like everything just erupted." She could still hear the Predator's voice echoing in her head, hot with threat. Rob rubbed his temples. "We have to barricade the doors, keep him out." Jess exchanged a glance with Leo, whose wide eyes reflected the same terror she felt. Each potential plan spun in her mind, but nothing made sense. There was no guarantee they could fight him off. As they blocked the entrance with shelves, her mind raced. "Did you see where he went?" "The Predator." Rob nodded slowly, his face pale. "He's still out there. I saw him watching before the explosion." His voice trailed off, weighted with uncertainty. Suddenly, the storefront's dim lighting flickered as the sirens outside blared louder, nearly drowning them in noise. Jess pressed her palm against Leo's back, the gentle touch grounding him. "We'll be okay. We just need to hold on until help arrives," she whispered, but even she didn't believe her own words. But that feeling of security shattered when they heard a noise clattering from the back of the shop, shadows flickering at the edges of her vision. "Stay here," Rob hissed, moving stealthily toward the sound, hand ready at his side like a solid barrier against impending danger. The tension in the air thickened. Jess felt her heart pounding in her ears, wishing desperately that she could shield Leo from the nightmare looming at their doorstep. "Don't leave us," Leo called out, the tremor in his voice breaking through the stillness. "I'll be right back," Rob promised, stepping into the shadows, disappearing from view. Jess's heart plummeted as she heard the door rattle, pounding from the outside as the Predator seemed closer than ever. Trapped and alone, Jess knew they had to make a decision. They couldn't hide forever. But at what cost? "Mom, what do we do?" Leo trembled, looking up with wide eyes. Then, out of the silence, came a slow, deliberate laugh. "Did you think you could outrun me?" The Predator taunted from outside. Jess felt panic tighten around her throat. They were running out of time. The Predator was closer than ever. Would Rob make it back to them? Or would they be ensnared in a trap designed for them from the beginning? Stealing herself, Jess realized they were remaining in a holding pattern, caught between survival and the Predator's relentless shadow. But there was no more running. No more hiding. Whatever happened next would turn their moment of fear into an unyielding fight for survival. And just as she scrambled to find a plan, the door creaked back, revealing only darkness beyond. What lay in those shadows? New hope or unfathomable danger? The flickering light overhead buzzed as anxiety rippled through the small space. Jess felt her heart jerk in sync with the dim bulb's erratic pulse. Shadows danced along the walls, stretching and shrinking like quicksand, taunting her, reminding her of the Predator just outside, his laughter reverberating through the door like a malicious ghost. "Mom, I'm scared," Leo whimpered, his grip tightening around her waist. The innocence in his voice pierced Jess's heart, mixing dread with her maternal instinct to protect. "I know, honey. But we have to be brave," she murmured, forcing her voice to stay steady. "Rob will be back, he's just checking things out." The words felt like a brittle shield against the truth. Just then, the floorboards creaked again, sharper this time, causing Jess to hold her breath. Rob hadn't been gone long, but every second felt like an eternity. How long could he stay out there against a monster that thrived on fear? From the back of the store came a sudden crash. Jess instinctively pulled Leo closer, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, Rob," she whispered under her breath. The predator's taunt filled the air again, closer. What's taking your friend so long, Jess? He's out there playing hero for a lost cause. The mocking tone sent shivers racing down her spine. Shoo, she hushed Leo gently, placing a finger to her lips. The last thing they needed was to draw attention. The distant blaring of sirens was smothered by the predator's laughter again, booming and overwhelming. They can't save you, it's just us now. How fun will this be? That twisted grin flashed into her mind, a twisted reflection of all her worst fears bubbling to the surface. Jess felt a surge of resolve mixed with a surge of anger. This was not just about her anymore. She wasn't going to let him terrorize her or Leo. Stay behind me, she instructed Leo softly, sorting through the clutter in the store. She spotted a heavy metal display stand. As adrenaline surged through her veins, she steeled herself. This wasn't the first time she had to fight for her son. This was just a different battlefield. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, the predator's form looming just outside. Jess could sense the change in the air, the predator's anticipation curling through her bones like static electricity. Rob! She called, heart racing as fear clawed at her resolve. We need you. But instead of Rob, the door exploded inward, splintering wood flying as the hulking figure of the predator filled the entrance. With eyes that glimmered like predatory stars, he stepped through the threshold, relishing the fear that clung to the air. Sweeping his gaze across the store, he stepped forward, feet crunching on shards of shattered wood. You thought you could block me out? He sneered, advancing with an unsettling calm. It only makes the game more interesting. Suddenly, Rob appeared from behind him, his expression a mixture of hesitation and steely determination. Jess, Leo. Move. The predator turned, surprise etched on his features, but a twisted smirk returned, unveiled as he calculated his next move. Feeling the tension coil like a spring, Jess seized the moment. Run! She shouted, sending Leo darting towards Rob. The predator's laughter echoed again, more sinister than before. As Jess followed, her hand grasping the edge of the display, she realized something important. He was as unpredictable as the flames still raging outside, but as Rob guided Leo to safety, Jess hesitated, adrenaline battling her instinct. We can't just leave him. Jess, we have to go. Now. Rob shouted, urgency cutting through. A single heartbeat thrust her into clarity, and for just a heartbeat longer, the predator remained still, his focus locked onto Jess as if he could sense her hesitation. Why don't you join us, Jess? He crooned. This could be so much fun. With fear coursing through her veins, Jess made her choice. She couldn't give him that power. She wouldn't even entertain his sinister proposition. And as Rob shoved the door open wider, exposing the fiery chaos beyond, Jess bolted toward the exit. Willing herself to believe they could outrun terror, she paused only long enough to throw one last look at the predator, their eyes meeting in a brief, explosive confrontation. But was this just the beginning of his twisted game? With the flames licking around them, Jess couldn't shake the feeling that the predator was not finished with them yet. Sliding into the street, she felt the ground shift beneath her unsteady, like her hope. What lay ahead was uncertain, but there was one undeniable truth. They were running toward danger, and the predator's laughter would follow. Would they find safety, or would they just plunge deeper into the nightmare? The chaos of the street hit Jess like a wall. The heat and smoke snaked around her as sirens wailed in the distance, mirroring the frantic beats of her heart. Rob's voice cut through the haze, directing Leo to a nearby alley, the only option for shelter against the inferno that had overtaken the storefront. Keep moving. Stay close. Rob urged, glancing over his shoulder toward the raging flames, as if the fire itself had eyes. Jess stumbled, her shoes sinking into the cracked pavement. The predator was still behind them, lurking in the shadows cast by the flickering streetlights. A chill ran down her spine, and when she turned momentarily, the flicker of something cold and malevolent caught her gaze. A wink, maybe? No, it was his grin. He was waiting, reveling in the chaos he'd sown. Mom Leo's voice was small, trembling. I don't like this just a little more, babe, she assured him, squeezing his hand. but the knot in her stomach twisted tighter. Each breath felt heavy, laced with smoke and fear. They ducked into the alley, its darkness wrapping around them like a heavy cloak. Rob pushed them forward, scanning for danger. "We can't stay here long. We need to find a way out of the neighborhood." Suddenly, a sound echoed behind them, the unmistakable crunch of footsteps in the debris. Jess's heart raced as she shared a panicked look with Rob. "He's coming. We have to go." Rob nodded, urgency radiating from him. "There's a fire escape at the end of the alley. We can climb up those stairs and get a better view. Maybe we'll spot help from above." Each step they took felt like a gamble, the darkness closing in, stretching the silence until it throbbed painfully. The predator was never far behind. Jess could almost feel the weight of his gaze bearing down on them. They reached the fire escape. Rob bolted for the ladder. Jess looked to Leo, who was breathing heavily. "You ready, buddy?" He nodded, eyes wide. As Jess started to climb, a deafening crash erupted at the alley's entrance. The predator had arrived, a shadow against the flames, eyes gleaming with sinister intent. He was fast, oh God, he was too fast. "Keep climbing," Jess shouted, panic igniting her voice. Leo scrambled up, nearly slipping, but Rob caught him just in time. The predator's laughter rang out, a chilling sound that made Jess's skin crawl. "You think you can escape me that easily?" he called, voice oozing confidence. Jess climbed faster, desperation clawing at her throat. The fire crackled below, flames licking up the building, casting a hellish glow around them. When they reached the top, Rob pulled Leo to safety and glanced over the edge. "We can't stay here. He'll find a way up." "What do we do?" Jess gasped, glancing at the building across the street. She could make out figures moving in the distance, maybe other survivors. "The rooftop. We can jump," Rob shouted, pointing toward the building across from them. "Are you crazy?" Jess's voice came out nearly a shriek, her body frozen in fear. "No, listen. We can't allow him to corner us. Trust me, I've done this before." "Before what?" she blurted, but she didn't care about the answer anymore. They had to move. With a nod of agreement, Jess focused on Leo. "Stay close to me." "Okay." His tiny voice trembled, fear clouding his features. They took a few runs, preparing themselves. Jess took a deep breath, her heart pounding, but all she could think about was Leo's safety. "On 3. 1, 2, 3. They leaped over the gap, Jess feeling the air rush past as they landed on the rooftop. Pain jolted through her ankle, but she shook it off. "We've got to keep moving," Rob panted, pulling Leo close. As they darted across the rooftop, Jess looked back, sensing that unsettling presence creeping closer. The predator had made it to the rooftop, his silhouette emerging like a phantom against the flames. "You can't escape me. The game has just begun," he roared, and Jess felt terror clawing at her throat. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find safety in the chaos? Or would they be ensnared in his wicked play? Every heartbeat echoed the ominous laughter that followed them, trailing closer with each desperate step taken into the unknown. The rooftop felt like a lifeline, but the threat was still looming behind them. Jess's heart raced as she heard the predator's footsteps pounding against the metal, the sound echoing in her ears like a grim drumroll. "Keep going. Don't look back." Rob's voice was sharp, urgent, and Jess pushed her legs to move faster. She could feel the pulsing adrenaline in her veins, a fierce mixture of fear and determination. Leo stumbled, nearly losing his balance. "I can't run anymore, Mom." His breath came in sharp gasps, and the weight of his fear crushed Jess's heart. She reached for him, pulling him close. "We'll take a break just a bit ahead," she promised, even as the predator's malevolent laughter haunted her thoughts, fueling their urgency. She had to keep her son safe, that was her only focus. They rounded a corner of the rooftop and abruptly stopped. Below them, another building loomed, its fire escape ladder dangling like an ominous invitation. Rob quickly scanned it, determination etched on his face. We can either try to make it across or drop down and run. It's better than staying up here. Then let us go. Jess said, nodding toward the ladder as her instinct screamed at her to move. They had to evade him, had to disappear into the night before he cornered them. One by one, they climbed down the ladder. Jess's feet found the somewhat stable ground, her ankle pulsing with pain, but she ignored it. Another noise echoed from above, and her heart dropped. Had he followed them, or was that merely the wind howling against the rooftop? Is he coming? Leo whispered, eyes wide with terror. I don't think so, Rob answered, but Jess could see the tension in his jaw, hear the tremor in his voice. A sudden flash lit the sky, illuminating the scene for a split second. Jess's eyes darted toward the source fireworks. Beneath the chaos, it felt strangely festive. But no, it had to be the flames spilling over from the buildings. We need to go now. She urged. They sprinted toward the back of the building, away from the crowds that were starting to gather below. Jess tried to focus on Leo, whose tiny hand felt hot and clammy in hers. She could sense the panic setting in deeper with every passing moment. But just as they gained some distance, the Predator's voice rang out again, cutting through the smoke. You think running will save you? I know every corner of this town. Jess halted, paralyzed by his words. What does he want? She thought, her heart pounding in her ears. What is this game? Without waiting for a response, Rob yanked Jess and Leo into another alley behind the building. The scent of burnt wood and smoke hung thick in the air, clouding her thoughts. Hurry! Rob said, darting under a collapsing awning. The ground beneath them shook slightly. Was it another explosion? Mom! Leo shouted, straining to keep up, and Jess's chest tightened. We're almost there, bud. Just a bit further. She encouraged, though every word felt like a weight tugging her down. As they reached the mouth of the alley, Jess spotted a dim street light at the far end. Hope flickered like a candle flame in her chest. There. We can get to that street and find help. She propelled Leo ahead, but the moment was snatched away when they heard its footsteps, fast and heavy, echoing through the darkness. The predator had found them again, tracking their scent like a wolf on the prowl. Jess felt her breath hitch, her heart racing in her throat. It was just the three of them against a relentless force, and she could almost feel the suffocating shadow closing in. Run! She yelled, desperation merging with courage as they dashed toward the light, their only beacon in this storm of chaos. Jess glanced back and caught that terrifying glimpse of his smile, dark, hungry, filled with a cruel anticipation. What did he want from them? The stakes were rising with each frantic step as they fled into the dark, uncertain of what lay ahead. But one thing was clear, safety was just out of reach, and the predator was closing in fast. Would they escape the nightmare, or had they just stumbled deeper into his twisted game? The alley felt oppressive, shadows clinging to them like a desperate embrace. Jess's mind raced as they sprinted toward the distant light. Every pounding footstep reverberated like a clarion call for survival, and the predator's laughter taunted them, echoing off the walls. Time felt slippery, sliding through her fingers as panic coiled in her stomach. Faster, Mom! Leo cried, his little legs pumping to keep pace. His wide eyes mirrored the terror that gripped Jess, and she felt her heart constrict at the thought of losing him. She couldn't let that happen. Not now. They burst through the mouth of the alley and onto the main street. The world had shifted, chaos transformed into a surreal spectacle of flashing lights, emergency vehicles, and frightened faces darting around them. The cacophony pulsed, a chaotic symphony of sirens and people shouting for help. Over there. Jess pointed toward a nearby squad car parked haphazardly at the side of the street. Her heart beat stronger. They had to reach those officers standing sentinel. Stay close, she commanded, pulling Leo's hand as they raced toward the car. Mom, what if he finds us? Leo's voice was small, quivering with fear. He won't. We'll be safe with them. Jess promised, though uncertainty gnawed at her confidence. With every glance over her shoulder, the predator felt closer, an invisible weight bearing down on her. As they reached the officer, Jess felt the bitter reality hit her like a cold splash of water. We need help. There's a man after us. She gasped, breathless, eyes wide. The officer looked at her, concern etched on his face. Ma'am, take a breath. We're doing everything we can, but you need to stay calm. His steady voice grounded her for just a moment. Before Jess could respond, a shadow loomed behind them. She turned, and her heart sank. There he was, the predator, eyes glinting with that cruel amusement, moving closer. I told you this would be fun, he sneered, savage delight dripping from his words. Instinct kicked in. Run! She shouted to Leo, pushing him behind her protectively. The officer rushed forward, hand on his weapon. Jess felt her legs tremble, but there was no time for fear. Hey! Step back! The officer yelled at the predator, who merely chuckled. Fools! You think you can protect her? The predator took a step closer, the smile on his face twisting into something far darker. Get back! Now! The officer's voice cracked with authority, but before he could react, the predator lunged forward, moving with terrifying grace. Jess felt the world blur as she fought to keep Leo shielded behind her. This was at the moment she had dreaded most had arrived. In that split second, Rob appeared like a beacon through the chaos, barreling toward them. Jess! Leo! He shouted, panic lacing his voice. What are you doing? The officer yelled as Rob pushed through, no hesitation in his movements. I'm not letting him take them. Rob's voice was fierce, resolve shining through the fear. Jess felt hope surge at the sight of him. Rob! Help us! She cried, urgency blaring in her words. Stay behind me! Rob ordered, positioning himself between them and the predator. Time seemed to slow as Jess's heart thudded frantically, the air thick with tension. They were cornered, no escape, nowhere to go. But Rob's presence grounded her. We can't be afraid, he whispered, just loud enough for Jess to hear over the chaos. His eyes locked onto hers, burning with determination. He believed they could face this monster. Then the predator moved. With a speed that was jarring, he lunged at Rob, whose response was immediate. Rob swung out, but the predator sidestepped with a mocking laugh. You think you can stand in my way? Keep Leo safe. Rob shouted as the officer helped block the predator's path. At that moment, Jess felt time snap back into full force. Fueled by instinct, she shouted, Get to the car. Nudging Leo toward the squad car, knowing that his safety mattered most, Leo's eyes widened with fear, but he nodded. Okay. He turned, shuffling quickly towards the vehicle. As Jess turned back to help Rob, the predator bore down on him, the air electric with danger. You'll regret this. This isn't the end. The laughter echoed harshly like a thunderclap, but Rob stood firm, resolute. The officer drew his weapon, standing between Rob and the predator, creating a living barrier against the encroaching darkness. Jess slammed the door to the squad car, heart racing, fear mingling with resolve. Get in. Let us go. She shouted at Leo, holding her breath as he scrambled into the back seat. Stand back. The officer yelled, directing the chaos around him. Rob glanced back at Jess, eyes filled with urgency. I'll hold him off. Just go. No. Come with us. Jess screamed, but the words rang hollow as Rob readied himself, a fierce look in his eyes. Go. Rob delivered, the command crashing through her doubts. For a heartbeat, Jess hesitated, wanting to stay, wanting to fight alongside him, but the weight of Leo's small hand in hers pressed her forward. Mom. Please. Leo cried, fear choking his voice. Okay. I'm coming. Jess lunged into the car, slamming the door just as shots rang out. The roar of the engine jolted her back to focus, and the car lurched forward. Pushing through the confusion, they sped away from the chaos, leaving behind the predatory laughter that taunted them. Jess didn't look back until they found a brief reprieve, the sirens fading into the cacophony of the night. Guilt rushed in, crashing against the adrenaline still pumping through her. Mom? Leo's small voice broke through her thoughts, shaking her from the chaos in her mind. I'm here, baby. I'm right here, she replied, feeling the weight of exhaustion settle in. They'd escaped, but would Rob be all right? The fear loomed heavy in the background, an echoing reminder of the danger still lingering like smoke in the air. The world outside began to clear, the terror of the night melted into the horizon, but Jess felt that deep tug within her, knowing she couldn't truly relax until Rob was safe. Hold on, Leo. She turned the steering wheel, heart heavy with determination. We're going back. We need to help him. With fire roaring behind them, Jess understood that this was not just about survival any longer. It was about loyalty, about the bonds that pulled them through the darkness. And as they raced back toward the chaos, Jess felt her resolve firming, not just for herself, but for Leo and for Rob. They weren't done fighting yet, they still had a battle to win. The night was far from over, but they would face it together. Now listen closely, because this is important. You need to subscribe right now. Don't wait even one more second, hit that red button so you don't miss the next exclusive stories I have lined up for you. Smash the like button now to feed this algorithm, and make sure you're part of our vibrant community. I want to hear your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion, so flood the comments section. And here's the real kicker: share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to be part of this journey. This is the moment to show your support. Let us keep this amazing tale going together.